Okay, so I just wanted to spend some time because earlier I mentioned methodology and research methodology being an important part of it, of the actual academic publication. And I really just wanted to share with you some of my thoughts around research methodology from the community that I represent in terms of construction and built environment. Because we've spent a lot of time over the last number of years having that kind of academic discourse and academic debate around methodology and the importance of it. You know, I personally think it's really, really important because it gives validation of the work that you're doing. You know, and it comes back to that question there in terms of, you know, sources. What sources can you use? Well, I would always use reliable and justified and validated sources. So to me, that, you know, methodology is linked with that. And common issues around publication and common issues that we report back as reviewers to the authors is that, you know, methodology is not justified, methodology is not correctly aligned, or the methods are only briefly explored. Okay. They would be common features, and this in the blue bubble there, you know, that's taken directly from feedback I would have given more recently to an author. The methodology section does not deal with methodology, but more the methods of the research. There is need to justify the choice of methodological approach in regard to the what, why, who, and even where of the research. The author might include their theoretical positioning and how this does impact on the research. That's a common review comment from myself and my colleagues in relation to papers that we get for review. And while the authors may have mapped out the literature and mapped out the gaps in the literature really, really well, what they fail to do is then link that to a justifiable and a correct methodological positioning and a methods approach. So I just wanted to share that with you, because methodology is really, really important, and I think it frames the work that you do. So from that point, okay. And I suppose the important thing is there is a difference between methodology and methods. And why I say that is, more often than not, people will just chronologically map out their methods and not indicate where the actual methodology has come from, okay? And it is the case that most academic journals will expect you to justify. Why did you choose the methods? And the methods are the approach, a case study, a quantitative survey, a qualitative interview, okay? But the methodology has to do with your actually methodological position. Why have you chosen qualitative research? Why have you chosen mixed methods, both qualitative and quantitative? Or why have you just gone the positivistic route of quantitative? So it's really important to justify your methodology in the research. And why it is the case, because there are 5 basic elements that underpin research. And if you're writing theoretically, if you're writing in an academic journal, you have to kind of step up to the mark in terms of positioning your research. And the 5 elements, I believe, that underpin research are: one's theoretical perspective, okay, the philosophical framework informing the work that you're doing, informing the research that you're doing. You know, what is the community saying? What particular lens are you looking at this from? Okay. The next element linked to that is ontology, your ontological position. You know, the assumptions within your community, within the research area about the nature of reality. And that should be embedded. So if you're taking a scientific, positivistic view on the research, how is that so? Why is it actually followed? Why are you following the scientific conventions? Or if you're not using the scientific conventions in your research, why aren't you using them? So again, you know, what within your subject area or your discipline or your topic are the assumptions about the nature and its reality. And I don't mean the nature and reality of the subject area is more what I mean. Linked to that then is the theory of knowledge within that discipline, one's epistemology. So again, your epistemological, ontological position, linking it to a theoretical framework. There's what actually builds up and leads you towards your strategy for the research. What methodology? Are you going to base it purely on qualitative interviews? Are you going to base it purely on 150 quantitative surveys sent out to a particular group of people? And why have you chosen to do that? And then the methods are, how did you gather that information? Was it interviews? Was it online surveys or whatever? So they're the 5 elements that should be actually linked to that section in a paper on methodology, stating, ontological, epistemological, and theoretical perspective, leading into the methodology and leading into the methods, and your justification for choosing those. And to me, that's if you actually include that in your paper, you're actually going in the right direction for, and you state it within the topic that you're doing it. You're actually moving towards the actual community accepting your paper, because they'll believe that it's founded on good methodological positioning. So that's why I actually wanted to focus a bit of time in that. So in your discipline, you need to be aware of what those elements are, know what is acceptable. Is it a quantitative versus qualitative debate? And I mentioned our own discipline, we were very much quantitative once upon a time, but now we realize construction management is linked to process. It's the management of the construction process. So now we have this actually qualitative research that we try to actually interpret and understand what are the issues for people in the management of the process, And more recently, then there's this debate around mixed methods, mixing the quantitative and the qualitative. So again, it could be a mixed method study that you're doing, and again, looking to where you want to publish and what is it they publish, So the important thing is to understand your discipline in that regard. Know what's acceptable. If you're thinking about doing a quantitative study, and all of the work or all of the research that's been produced in the journal that you're aiming at is qualitative, you're going to have an uphill challenge to try and get that work published. So it's important to understand your audience in terms of that, the audience in terms of the journal and what's what.